this is gonna be than usual.
Ahoy hoy! Hello and welcome to my review of Control, a incredible, quite frankly strange paranormal game I played just before Christmas. Where you take the perspective of Jessie Faden as her search for her brother Dylan leads her to the oldest house, which is a shape-shifting, brutalist monolith structure in the middle of New York City that is both there and not there, as it exists in a different alternative dimension. Its outward and inward shape changing constantly to suit the needs of the persons inside of it or wanting to use it, and in this case that would be the Bureau of Control.
Where did the hiss come from? I'm not sure. You said the hiss was here when you entered.
Once Jessie enters the oldest house, she quickly finds that it's in lockdown and is under the influence of the hiss, a powerful alien entity which manipulates and affects anybody involved.
Openings to other places as well. I don't even know where to start looking. But in the context, it's good news.
The hiss affects everybody that doesn't have a Hedron resonance amplifier, known as the HRA, that people wear in their chest around the Bureau, in which Jessie encounters them. Dylan has been captured by the Federal Bureau of Control ever since they two were separated in their home of Ordinary years before. One thing that I noticed that was quite funny throughout the game was a lot of time the audio got screwed up and I couldn't hear one or both people involved in conversations like this. It was kind of disturbing, but happened multiple times throughout my gameplay. But happily enough, it actually gets explained toward the end of the game as it being
That's a good answer.
Is she testing me?
A possibility that an altered item affected what you could hear or not hear within the oldest house. So I still to this day have no idea if it was an actual issue with the game itself or if it was actually meant to be a plot device.
Communication is an issue.
Either way, it was hilarious.
No sound there, as if you've gone deaf, and radios don't work.
Can you tell me what an object of power is exactly?
You know, lending a lot from the SCP Foundation universe, the oldest house is a cauldron or storage place for all altered objects of power that are strange or different in the world, and the Bureau of Control, finds and collects those objects for safe storage in the oldest house, and where they can study and understand it, but more importantly keep it secure and safe and have control over it.
So objects of power are mundane objects that house paranatural energies.
Why is kid stuff always so creepy?
With the mysterious power of Polaris, Jessie is able to cleanse corrupted objects of power throughout the oldest house. These can be mundane looking objects that have extreme powers, from worldly manipulation to dangerous alternative planes of existence. The game, similar to a lot of RPGs, hosts like a very kind of cool and interesting upgrading and modding kind of certain point of view in which your character can be further improved and designed exactly how you want to play the game. The game is like a third-person shooter, but not obviously in the kind of conventional sense. By the end of the game, you essentially become kind of godlike. Jessie's powers range from like a force shield, like a Jedi, to like telepathy, to object manipulation, being able to fling like 3 objects at once at anything. The fighting is, I'm not even joking, like probably the funnest kind of fighting dynamic I've seen in the game in a long time. It never became dull or uninteresting, as enemy amount and enemy variety constantly changes, but I swear it never gets tiring. Ripping a column out of the ground and flinging at someone, like that's all games should be. Throughout the game you meet a lot of altered items in which you have to defeat and purify them from the hiss, which the side missions in this game were absolutely fantastic. Like the whole game could have been side missions. Like it was fun to figure out these interesting stories where these mundane looking items are affecting the world in a negative way, and you just constantly get so much of them throughout it, and you just see ones that are secure and you want to know what's their story and what's their power. But that kind of untold mystery in the game was it was great. Like, I wish there was a sequel to this just so they could show what all of these additional altered items do and what their power is. Basically, the stuff you do interact with is just a small percentage of what actually is housed within the oldest house. The side missions were extremely memorable, like rescuing a man from a fridge, as in the fridge was like a multi-dimensional demon that you had to kill in a fridge, and people had to sit and stare at the fridge or else the demon would kill them. Like, it's just, that's the kind of hilarity out of the SCP universe that like just makes this game fantastic. It's just otherworldly. Like, I've never really played a game like this, and it's exactly the kind of game I love. Yeah, the launching control and ability, just object manipulation and fighting in this game is just, you know, what's not to love about it? It's you're just like flinging stuff at everybody. Like, by the end of the game, once you improve your powers and unlock all your abilities, you essentially become a god. Like, you become godlike. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Langston's missions were the funnest, as you just got to explore and see all these. Well, there wasn't enough of them. There should be a lot more. One of the best missions was the ashtray maze. Now, after receiving Atti's cassette player, you go through this constantly shifting maze as it morphs and changes and gets more and more strange and obscure while you're fighting hordes of enemies that come at you. In kind of like similar a lot of Far Cry's, where they have a kind of music montage mission where like it's just pure fun, where like you're listening to kind of heavy metal as you just destroy tons of enemies in a constantly shifting, mind-bending alternative universe within this maze. Yeah, it was one of the highlights of the game, this mission, for sure. Because it just wasn't expected. You were actually thinking it was just going to be a maze, and then you see this completely roller coaster. I hate using that word, but a kind of roller coaster of a mission where you have tons of enemies, and you finally get to the end, and the maze is solved.
That was awesome.
Enough said. Oh, at the end of the game, Casper Darling gives you a tribute of like a homemade karaoke style kind of song that he made just for Jesse. And next to the Threshold Kids, it was absolutely hilarious. I actually just watch this every now and again. Like, it's actually quite good. Played beautifully by Matthew Peretta, serenades Jessie in a karaoke style video montage to basically say that she's dynamite, and it's again similar to the Threshold Kids. It was one of the highlights of the game. Like, these little moments kind of take you out of the gameplay, but in a good way. That you know, you can't spend a whole game flinging boulders at people. These little pleasurable interruptions kind of make a game better and definitely give you a more memorable experience, as they're, you know, few and far between, but they definitely make a big impact. Like, he plays Casper Darling absolutely perfect.
Neighbor of the beast. Get it?
He's almost like a Michael Scott kind of character, like in his childlike enthusiasm, and like I'd definitely imagine Michael Scott doing a parody video like this for somebody. Spoilers ahead from now. I would proceed at your own caution.
I call her Polaris.
The game comes to a kind of head where you eventually find that Hedron or Polaris is actually held securely in the oldest house. So just a bit of story that Hedron apparently, quote unquote, corrupted the Bureau.
They're either dead or they're monsters. I'll stop them. I have a secret ally. The Nostalgia Department. I have my own slide for the projector. I took it. A memento. In ordinary. After the girl burned them. It's burnt.
Yeah, so Trench opened the door to the hiss to infect the building. Essentially find out that Polaris wasn't needed. It was essentially a catalyst, and the power to purify altered objects was in Jessie the entire time. Polaris just increased it until she could do it by herself.
Hedron is dead.
Trench brought the hiss in.
Alive here.
Jessie purified it, and now she really just has the power of Hedron from the beginning.
Maybe Hedron put you in our heads when we met her. Maybe you were always there. And she was just trying to teach me how to trigger you. Maybe I'll never understand. Maybe I don't need to. Trench was the first to be corrupted by the hiss. Slowly, over the years. His need for control only made it worse. It was Trench who took the projector to the Nostalgia Department. He opened the door to the hiss. Just like that. With Hedron dead, the hiss tried to corrupt me too. But I'm stronger than them. We're stronger. They're waiting. They'll try to stop us.
Yeah, so the final mission I found actually to be a little bit of a headache. I mean, not to say it wasn't fun, it was probably the most intensive battle in the entire game, but the fact that the whole thing was shot in this kind of blood red kind of vision, I understand it, because you're essentially inside the hiss fighting it, but I just found it, I got a little bit of a headache playing this level just because it was constant red. It's like looking at just a UV light the entire time. Yeah, eventually Jessie purifies Dylan, him being the half antagonist for the game. He ends up in a coma, and then the game ends. And that's where I kind of stopped playing. I still have the 2 DLCs, the Foundation and the Awe to play, which I'm looking forward to. But that's when the game ends anyway. Basically, the hiss is, semi-destroyed, Dylan's in a coma, and Jessie is now the accepted director of the Federal Bureau of Control. That is the game, and hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.
I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Control. We're in this together.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.
And
Bye bye.